In a Christ-like walk, competitiveness is not about being seen. It's about God being seen. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining in. Thank you for tuning in to another Walking with Christ podcast. Today, we're going to jump to the topic of competitiveness, everyone. And I just wanted to, again, just welcome everybody in to be able to like, share, subscribe as we continue to grow and walk in this journey together, everyone. So, I'm sure there are various people out there, and myself included, can think of times to where competitiveness has been a part of their life, whether it's in sports, whether it's in things that you're doing in many other facets in life. Sometimes there's that tone straight up, or even an undertone of a competitive nature in your environment, and that environment may not include there being a scoreboard or stats to represent how you were taking part in that competitive nature. Well, the one thing I've grown to learn is that, and some of you out there have grown to learn this as well, is that competitiveness can create some very ugly traits in your character. And on the opposite side, it can create some positive traits in your character as well. On one side, unhealthy is a selfish nature. On the other side is a selfless nature. And on one side is making everything about you, or wanting to get the win, so to speak, no matter what it means, even if it means lying, even if it means cheating. And the other side of is that you're focusing on you and the team being better. And the team can represent multiple things. It can represent family as well. But you and the team being better in a way that's really healthy and uplifting to everybody, in a way that unifies instead of divides. You know what I mean? And it's fun too when you're talking about certain aspects of it. Is something that doesn't tear people down in a lot of different ways. So when you are competitive, you have to look into yourself and say, what does that mean? And how do I show up in that space of, there being competition in my environment? Am I leaning into things that are enabling an unhealthy nature within my environment? Or am I leaning into things that are helping, make sure competitiveness is not overtaking our ability to focus on what's important, to make sure that we're not getting lost in it, so to speak. I will tell you, when I was doing things in sports, when I was doing things, especially earlier on in life, I was pretty competitive. But I will say that I would quickly shift my competitiveness just to see the team do well. Now, that wasn't always the case. There were some times, especially earlier on, where, especially when I was in sports, I was so interested in, what's the stat sheet saying? What's the stat sheet saying? Let me go try to take a peek at that to see what's going on, and what that looks like. Until eventually, I didn't care what the stat sheet said. It could say whatever it wanted to say. Because the only thing that would be of any importance, especially from a sports perspective, is did we come away with the W or not? Did we come away with the win or not? And, that happens for a various number of reasons. How I contribute to it personally, and even in a team standpoint from a work perspective, you could see, and it was always talked about, especially when I served in the military, to where you would be able to tell the people who would be so heavily focused on winning awards, climbing the ladder, and all that. You'd be able to tell. And I could tell. And it was always one of those things to where you would find that may not be important, doesn't matter to the people who had the ability to, say that this person was being pushed along as opposed to that person. Um, it 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 didn't always um, end up being the best person was put in a position. It was sometimes just a result of the competitive nature of the environment. So that's the dynamic that exists in a lot of different places. Competitiveness and what can stem from competitiveness can definitely take over an environment. And we have to find ourselves in a place to where, are we allowing competitiveness to take over and be prominent where we should be allowing God to be prominent in our lives? Are we allowing competitiveness to be a void filler, or even an idol, because of how important that we make it? Because the thing of it is what are we competing for? What are we trying to win? What are we trying to gain? Why is that pursuit such a thing for us that we would be having that focus in an unhealthy way? So before we continue to move forward in it, this is what I'm talking about, because we're talking about the ambition part of it. So Philippians 2:3 talks about this. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. So it goes back to, how are you showing up? How am I showing up with that? And is it a result of selfish ambition that you're seeking something out? So the one thing that I started to find is, when I am doing whatever I'm doing to make sure that I'm exemplifying godliness and how I show up in it, then I need to make sure that win or loss, it's not me is who I am that's solely being seen, but the God through me that is being seen, and what is existing, what I'm contributing into those environments. So is that what people see in you? Do people see? Do you see? Do you notice when you reflect on it? Hopefully you do reflect on it, that God was most prominent in how you showed up in that environment, how you showed up in that situation. And here's the surprising thing, that when I've allowed God to be what was most prominent, that I work, as I've said in previous videos, I want to work to a way that's pleasing to Him. To me, that equates to giving my all and sharing His existence in my life, and making sure that that's known in the way that I'm communicating verbally, physically, and and how I'm handling myself in any environment, sports, work related or otherwise. So to make sure He's seen in that, and that work ethic will allow you, me, and others to stay in a presence of mind that is focused on honoring Him and what you do and everything that you do. And that should be what's most important. That would also make you very consistent. I would also make your work ethic pretty good, if not very good. And it's just one of those things. So when people were ebbing and flowing through their emotions and how they approach things, for those that are really trying to do it in a way that's pleasing to God, those people are staying fairly consistent and able to weather the storm, so to speak, and deal with different various situations with a level head, so to speak. And sometimes those things are important vocally, and to others sometimes They go unnoticed, but it doesn't matter because God notices it. God sees you and how you operate in these environments. God sees me and how I operate in these environments. So, if it's to the glory and honor of Him, whether it's put in front of it as something that's important or not, but more often than not, it will be important to some degree or the other. It's just about how important, and you have to ask yourself, is being seen more important than God being seen in you? Is getting something in pursuit of what may result from being competitive as important as what God is trying to do through you in that environment? It's important that we recognize, acknowledge, and are aware of what is going on in our environments and how we are representing not just ourselves, but who we are in God, no matter where we are. There is a thing that we can do to make sure that we compete in a healthy way. 2 Timothy 2:5 talks about it, and this is what it talks about, everyone. This is what it goes into. It states that an athlete is not crowned in so many words, to compete just according to the rules. So let's actually go back to what it says exactly. So as I'm going down to this real quick. All right, this is what it says exactly in 2 Timothy 2:5. Similarly, anyone who competes as an athlete does not receive the victor's crown except by competing according to the rules. And that's important, because there are some times when you're playing sports and you may not personally agree to the rules. But what is this more about? What is this really about deeply? That you are exuding, that you are reflecting a character that is connected and aligned with what you're supposed to be doing in God in all ways, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. So this could be in a work environment. You may not agree with the rules of the workplace. I found myself in that place of not agreeing with the rules of the workplace in different facets and different places that I've worked at. Okay, but what do you need to do? You need to find what God needs you to do in that environment. Do that work, and all that other stuff will take care of itself. It goes back to what we talk about in scripture as far as the battle being the Lord's, not yours. Yes, in discernment, you need to pick and choose the things that you're going to contribute a statement, a conversation, a thought to. In a sense, have a healthy objection to, but you don't need to take on the battle, the whole entirety of the battle yourself. You get that over to God and let Him work all that through. Too many times you see that struggle happen, and it can take shape when those that are seeking to compete with others, they're seeking relevancy, they're seeking significance, they're seeking being seen in some way, they're seeking the notoriety, climbing the ladder, all these other things. And there are a lot of people who climb the ladder. There are very few people who climb the ladder and actually do the work that is meaningful along the way. And that's one of the things about it. I've found myself, whether I've decided to, take to a promotion in a sense of, what a role is or not, as long as I'm doing His work, what He needs us to be, what He needs us to have will come our way. And it's happened. But sometimes we want to take the bull by the horns. We want to take the wheel instead of giving God the wheel and letting Him direct us. And then we find ourselves being steered into a situation that is difficult to deal with and sometimes hard to get out of. But whenever I've let Him have the will willingly and obediently in situations, things have happened as they should. Yeah, there's still going to be some struggles. There's still going to be some things that are difficult. But ultimately, when I make sure that my focus on it is on God, okay, let me make sure I'm doing your work. Let me make sure when I'm saying have your way, that I'm not letting aspects of my character get in the way, so that you can live through me in a way that allows me to see clearly, hear clearly, think clearly, and feel through the things that are happening around me in a way that doesn't distract me, set me back, and cause me not to see that you are doing things in amazing ways that I can never understand in completion. That's why the word talks about not leaning on your own understanding. Because when we try to wedge our understanding in there and make it prominent in what God is doing, then we start to get in our own way. But when you let that understanding go from a standpoint of what God is doing through you, some amazing things can happen when you walk that path obediently, and the focus is honoring Him and not the seeking of oneself. And definitely when you see that play out from a standpoint of how you were trying to go about life and what that has shown up to be in environments, many environments throughout our world that are so dead set on having a competitive nature living within their environment. And what does it accomplish? Usually a whole bunch of nothing. And what it does is, more so put people against one another than it does with one another. Again, there can be healthy competition, but the problem is that the example of that doesn't exist very much. So when people say, yeah, well, let's have a healthy competitive environment amongst our team or amongst our environment, people don't know what that means and looks like, so they take to it to the natural sense of what competitiveness has meant to people individually, and that's what ends up living in an environment. And more often than not, that's not healthy competition. So we have to really be clear when we say we want healthy competition, and the example of what that is in an environment, as far as reflecting that, exemplifying that, and being that. But most importantly, what matters the most is doing what's important. And for me, and for those out there that this channel is focused on, is honoring God. So if the things that are unhealthy in competition are getting in the way, you have to make a choice. What do you want to be seen? How do you want to pursue things? What do you want to be important as you are doing all this in your life? Do you want it to be, hey, this person did everything they could to climb the ladder, to gain notoriety, to be seen? Or is it that person made others important? Yeah, they may have not gotten out of it what they deserved, but it was unquestioned where their heart was. Depending on what that means to you, I know what it means to me. It means my heart is with God, and I'd rather live with that than live with doing things a way that isn't reflective of God, and having that be part of what I know and I am aware of it myself. So if you want to make sure that you do things in the right way, if you want to make sure that you are honoring God, even in the spirit of competition, make it about honoring God and not about winning. God bless.